I beat the buzz of your phone, so. I think it's a good thing to just remind, if you didn't write that check, you probably should have. Yeah, I knew that was the answer to Jeff's question. No, Jeff. No, you're not allowed to see anything in PowerShell we've ever written. That would just be wrong. All right. Is Todd on now?
Can you hear me? I even GitHub my PowerShell.
I can hear that keyboard of his.
You can. Clickety clack. I'll move the mic. Well, I guess I can probably move the mic now. I don't know if that will impact keyboarding or not.
So you guys still can't hear? No, I see Todd going out. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
I see it. I see it going out.
All right. Okay. So I much missed. So last week Mark was busy and you were busy, so I was all on my lonesome.
Aw.
I will say that I really miss having sidekicks, you and Mark to bounce things off of. But everything just works when it's just me. Like I just fire it up. I'm like, ah.
No, nothing.
No XSplit drama. I just, audio source, Yeti. It just works.
And I see you haven't shaved in protest. You got.
I decided that I won't shave. I wasn't going to shave since the last time you and I did the podcast together. So that was mid-February, something like that. So I'm,
yeah. And Jeff points out your piece of paper is still.
We can block Jeff, right? I mean, it's just a.
No, I like Jeff and his
I have a level. Just a second. I'll go get a level. We'll see how level it is. Just a second.
Oh gosh. All right, guys. No matter how level this thing comes back, you guys have got to convince him that it is not level, right? Even though it's going to show him at the level, you just have to tell him that, man, it is off by like 20 degrees. So you guys have at him attack.
All right, I'm back. I was leveling the build plate on my 3D printer, and I was using the level. So. Oh yeah, perfectly square. I mean, you guys can't see the bubble, but it is. What's that phrase in My Cousin Vinny? Dead on balls accurate. I think that's. Let's test it over here. Oh yeah, that bubble is right in the middle. There is just no way around that. I mean, it is.
Your house is not level. I like it. Good job, Eric.
Eric is the Shane suck up of the day.
Oh, and Jeff says that I'm better. I don't know, Jeff.
Jeff is really begging to get kicked out today.
I mean, Jeff has mocked your your PowerShell. Or he didn't even have to mock it. He just shows up and that mocks your PowerShell.
Yeah, he just mentions it. Oh, you and PowerShell.
Right, he almost like needs a special spelling. Like he spell it with a lowercase p when he talks about Todd's PowerShell.
That's hysterical. Yep, that's probably true. Probably accurate. Oh, geez. Yeah, I've got some really crazy PowerShell stuff coming up, and I'm just not, I don't know. I have to write, so I used to work at a company that wrote 3D software, and one of the things that took a lot of time that they didn't mean to do, but they had to do was write translators to translate 3D parts from every program on Earth to the ones that we do. And those guys always hated it and complained about it. Well, I'm going to end up writing a translator to do some SharePoint migration. So there's some web platform that a customer is migrating out of, and it creates these, as far as I can tell, completely random packages. And I have to write something to translate that into something that ShareGate can import. So that'll be goodness. Yeah.
Oh, Jeff's threatening to bring the village people.
uh,
That's the way I think can think of Jeff. Jeff is the leader of the village people.
that's oh. So what is Mark internal PowerShell stuff, man? Oh, so the new version of PowerShell came out. I haven't looked at that honestly. The Office 365 PowerShell stuff's always getting better.
Is the PowerShell 6 thing, is that did that just go away, or is that still a story?
No, well, the PowerShell, the open source stuff, that just got updated. I think it's 7 something now.
Oh well.
That just came out.
I saw it. I was too busy when it came out. I'm just skipping it.
Splatting has been a big topic. Yep. Brett so Lori, I don't know if Lori can hear us yet. I know she's in the chat room. But last week, Brett stepped up and kept notes for titles for me since I was Lori-less.
Brett, if you could also write a summary when we're done.
So Brett, what we have found out is that, well, for sure, Shane and Lori hasn't voiced a negative opinion on it yet, but neither Shane or I really enjoy writing summaries for the podcast. And so it's always that whole, whoever asks for it first, the other guy has to do it. It's really become a thing in the back channel of the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, and really what it boils down to, Brett, is after the show is over, we both want to disavow we were ever part of it. So we just run away. And if I have to think about a summary, I have to admit to myself that we talked about the stupid crap we talked about. And that's just not good for my ego. So
there's some amount of denial there. Yep. So now that Lori's here, though, Lori can do it. And Brett, we will be happy to share the profits from the podcast with you for these things. We will give you the share that we've been giving Lori. When Lori's not here, we will give you her share.
Yeah, well, profits. You can have 100% of my take of the profits.
That is a very generous offer. That is
150. You want 200%? I know. I know how math works. And when you multiply a number by 0, you still get 0. So you can multiply that 0 by anything you want.
Multiply it by pi, by e.
Yeah,
all those imaginary numbers.
There you go, Brett. You officially make 10% of the show's profits as of today. Yep. So there you go. Your check would be in the mail, but that would cost us money.
And that's like state fraud across state lines, all that. You don't want to mess with that.
Yeah.
All right, so let me tweet something here.
Yeah, I think was it the government? I think the IRS sent me something this year where previous year's taxes, they had miscalculated the interest that they had paid me. Something. Basically, I needed to pay taxes on 17 cents.
Oh, geez. So which one of the kids doesn't go to college now?
Yeah, and
Luke probably doesn't need it, so you can probably save some money there.
Probably. But I feel like it probably cost them $25 or $30 to send me this thing to tell me to pay, my tax rate on 17 cents, right? I don't even owe them 17 cents. I owed them, I just need to include that in my income and account for. And I don't know about your account, but my account actually drops all the cents, right? He only works in whole dollars, so that would have gotten rounded out.
That's hysterical.
Lori remembers her promotion to executive producer. That was a big
day. It was a big day.
Yeah. I wasn't here. I was like, the heck with it. I let the power go to my head.
Been regretting that decision ever since.
Yeah. Well, really, though, it's that whole thing, right? I need people under me to move up levels so I could move up levels, right? If she's the executive producer, then I need to be the director in charge of executive producers, or, that's how I move myself up the corporate ladder here.
Yep. So Sue Hanley, her sons and son-in-law are in the movie industry. They, do a bunch of stuff. And so we had a discussion in Sweden a couple of weeks ago about all the different types of producers on TV shows and movies. She is there, and none of us can make heads or tails of what any of those people do. Yes, and any Jane Cobb quotes will be appreciated, Mark, so carry on with those.
I think basically those people get paychecks that reduce the amount the people who actually do the work get. I think that's the key role that those people play.
It is absolutely all about how much those people get paid. Yes, residuals and percentages of percentages, and yes. Yes, that is the scheme.
Oh, there you go. Brett can have a take on the residuals from the show. There you
Oh,
go.
the residuals, man! I'm not giving up those residuals. And you just never know, what new thing is going to come out, what new media, like when it gets projected into people's eyeballs, and we only specify online and the residual stuff. You just got to be very careful with that.
Oh man, Brett, just know I tried to get you the residuals. Todd shut it down.
I've talked to my lawyer.
Down.
Yeah. So I think if I have you up on my high monitor, I think it gives a crazy view because I'm looking over the camera.
Yes.
All right. Does it look better if I have you down here?
Yes. I don't know.
Well, fiddle.
Right. This is a classic problem. I need the webcam to be right
in the center of the screen.
right there.
They can put fingerprint readers in the center of the screen. Why can't they put webcams?
Yeah.
Book residuals. That's funny, Mark. I did our taxes, and I think I got $100 in royalties, $130 in royalties last year. Mine would have been a little bigger than yours, Shane. So how much did you get?
No idea.
So funny story about that, kids. I think it was the last book we did, the 2013 book. Shane and I were comparing our royalty checks right after it came out, and we realized that mine was bigger than his. No jokes about that, please. So we talked to the publisher, and we found out that because of how something was entered, my percentage was just like 0.1 or 0.5 or something higher than Shane's. And the publisher decided it was more work than they wanted to go to fix it. So they just left it, and I just get paid more.
Sound like a lawsuit to me. Class action, baby. Here I come.
It was pretty funny. Like, yep, absolutely, we're paying Shane less, but we're paying him what we told him we'd pay him. So, best emails ever, and not because of the money, just because of the sticking it to Shane.
You looked a little too happy with that.
That was a good day. That was a really good day.
All right, should we do this thing where we talk about things that people want us to talk about?
I think that might be stretching it a bit, but yeah, and now you're putting the lip lube on. Let me do something too.
Got to have these babies ready to go.
I just rolled my chair over my toe too. Hey, is your new chair still working out? Should I buy one of them?
I think so. I was thinking about that this morning. I don't know why. And the best way that I can explain it is I don't ever think about it, and I think that's the most complimentary thing I can say about a chair. You know what I mean? I was like, get in there, I'm like, oh, this is so cushy. But I never, if I sit there for 12 or 15 hours a day, which I'm known to do, I don't think, oh, this chair sucks. I think it gets my endorsement.
So it's funny talking about how you don't know how to define whether a chair is good. Dan Addis was posting something about he's filling out some Canadian government paperwork, and they ask what his home address is, and they defined home as the place you think about returning to when you're not there. So in case anybody's like, well, what do you mean home address? The place you think about returning to when you're not there.
Oh, Lori's at a Chick-fil-A. Oh, we'll talk about that on the show. It's I have a traumatic Chick-fil-A story for you guys.
All right, well, let's get things going. Start the clock, Lori. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Todd and Shane's Cloudy Podcast, number 429, recorded live Wednesday, April 17th, 2019. I am Todd. Who are you? And I can't remember which side you're on now.
I'm Shane. It's been so long, I feel like I barely know you. So my name's Shane Young.
We have a guest host this week. His name is Shane.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't remember the last time we actually got together to do this thing.
It has been a long time. You and I have been some busy folks traveling all over the world. Well, me all over the world, you all over the U.S.
Well, I mean, I went to Branson, Missouri. I mean, it's roughly...
And Omaha.
And Omaha, yeah.
Omaha. Like, I don't know which one of those is a more obscure reference, Branson or Omaha. That is tough.
Yeah, and Branson was interesting because it was like this tourist destination in the middle of nowhere, right? I mean, it's like a big deal for that region that I'd never heard of. So
yeah, I mean, I remember going there as a kid and loving it. And oh yeah,
you drive down that road and there's all these signs for world's biggest man and all these like crazy like shows and things. I think
world's tallest dwarf, all those things. Yeah, they're good. And the funny thing about all of those things is Shane and I were both in Branson, but not at the same time, so we didn't see each other. And weird. Omaha is really close to like 2 hours away from where I live, but I didn't see him there because I had some other stuff going on, and that just didn't work. It was Like two ships passing in the night.
Yeah, it was a weird series of traveling. The way we just kind of kept doing this, and like even like with Summit, right? We were both there, but we were 400 miles apart because that campus is so darn big at this point. And
yeah, it was weird. But I'm mostly done with travel now. I had a stretch there where I was on the road 3 out of 4 weeks, but that's all done now. So it's good.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but the next place I go is SharePoint conference in May. So
I'm going to SharePoint Saturday in Atlanta on May 11th.
Oh,
but
what drags you to Atlanta? Just for the heck of it?
Well, it's a weird combination of things. One of them is Dan Addis always pings me about that, and it makes me feel special. And I like Dan, so I will do that. One of my favorite Canadians. And also, Atlanta is one of the few places where I can hop on a plane and get off at the place that I want to go. Like there's a direct flight, and so I just feel like such a big deal. Like I feel like such a well-seasoned traveler that I can just get on a plane and get off in the city I want to be at.
Yeah, that's that was actually when you were saying, I was thinking that. I was like, Atlanta should be a direct flight. I didn't know if they were going to send you to MSP first to get to Atlanta.
I had that option. So I have this weird deal now. And that was one of them where I knew when I wanted to be there, and there was a great flight from Des Moines to Atlanta that was exactly the time that I wanted. Like it leaves at 11 a.m., so I don't have to leave too early. And it gets in Atlanta early enough in the afternoon. I can go to speaker dinner without rushing. Perfect. Lori's going to pick me up. So that was all good. So I'm like, all right, I'm leaving out of Des Moines. But then there were no flights back to Des Moines that were exactly the one that I wanted. But there was a great one to Minneapolis that was exactly what I wanted. And I'm like, So I took the crappy one to Des Moines, I think. I forget.
Travel's just,
it's
just no fun.
But no, I'm back. I'm back for a while. But you know what is great with all this great technology we've got? I was able to do a webinar yesterday for the folks in Croatia without leaving my desk. Oh. I did. The Syskit folks had a webinar on groups that I did yesterday. It was awesome. 100 and some people showed up. A lot of familiar faces. Mark was there. I don't remember who else in the chat room was in there, but we had a good time. The group story is exciting and getting even better.
Yeah, let's say, are you still digging groups? You still pro groups?
I have a pro group stance. Yeah. And I think it's one of those things. It's like having a pro gravity stance, like whether you like it or not, it's there. You just got to figure out how to make peace with it.
I have a complete sideways on that. I'm not going to take it though. I'm going to stay here.
All right. Later, the After Dark show.
Okay.
So yeah, it's work, and groups is one of those things that everybody's going to have to run into, and it's so confusing. So in one hand, I feel like in a year, I'm not going to be able to do this groups talk because everybody's going to understand it. But then I also recognize the thing that you're thinking is in a year, there will be new people coming onto Office 365 that will have no clue about groups. And it'll be changing. So
yeah. Well, one of the challenges we have, so in Power Apps, we can't use Office 365 groups for security. We can only use users or Azure Active Directory security groups. So right, at some point we'll all come on board. I would hope they'll make Office 365 groups available to us. So
yeah, that's interesting.
Right. That's why I wanted to point out, add that to your arsenal of confusion around groups. So Azure AD security groups, which I'm assuming no one's ever actually used on purpose, are the only security groups that we can use.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I've done, I changed 6-8 months ago. You and I do a lot of talks, and we do a lot of the same talks, and we iterate on them. So what I used to do in the past is for every conference that I went to, I had a folder where I had my notes and my abstracts and all that. And then when I would do a topic, I would have to remember where I did that talk last and go back into that folder and find it. So what I started doing like 6 or 8 months ago is I've got a set of folders that are topics. And then when I speak at a conference, I get that topic deck ready, and then I copy it over and apply the template for that conference, and that's the one that I use. And then the next time I do groups, I don't have to worry about where I did it. I just go to the groups topic folder, and it's the most up to date. And so that has worked out pretty well. But then there's always that thing where I got my deck ready because templates never apply exactly right. So I can't like do it 3 minutes before I go online, copy the deck over and do it. Just these little iterative things. So I have to go back and adjust them. But that's worked out pretty well. And I think I've got a pretty good deck going now. Because it's always got the new stuff.
Yeah, see, and I've really struggled with decks in the Power Apps in that Power Platform space because I really just want to get up there. I just want a demo for the whole time. You do, yep. And that's pretty much. I mean, I keep making decks and then I just don't use them. I'm like, all right, well, we did 3 slides. Yeah, let's move on. And but at the same time, I appreciate that I probably should have slides. But the other thing, I mean, if you guys think the rate of change in Office 365 is fast, right? Power Apps is, we're lapping the rate of change, and some of them become, especially like UI elements, they just reboot. I don't know. So I'm still struggling right now with kind of where I'm at with PowerPoint. So instead I just demo, and I can't go wrong.
Yeah, and that brings us into, so first off, go to syskit.com. I think you can register for the thing that I did yesterday, and they've got a recording. They'll hook you up. You can watch it. Email me if you've got questions. But you do have in the notes, or I guess I put it, talking about how fast Power Apps iterates. They added a pretty big but a pretty small update here a couple of weeks ago that had people really excited. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and I will point out I completely missed this one. So I when I was looking at your notes, I'm like, what's this bozo writing about my product for? And yeah, so
look at me providing value.
It's uncanny. But no, so in Power Apps, one of the things that gets a lot of people in trouble. I'm going to rabbit hole. All right, so one of the things that we use typically for a separator between multiple commands, so if we want to string multiple formulas together, we use a semicolon. Well, a lot of times what will happen to people is when they're kind of cutting and pasting, moving things around, there's this accidental tendency to leave a semicolon at the end of the line, even though you're completely done. Yeah. And when you do that, they leave a little red squiggle that's about the size of 5 pixels.
Yeah.
And when they do that, no one finds it. Like, why does my stuff work? So they finally changed the experience so that if you have a semicolon at the end, it's just automatically ignored. So you no longer get an error from that. So I thought that was a nice step forward. Yeah. Just a little change that is completely meaningless to you until you're the person who can't find that semicolon is kicking you in the butt.
Yeah, so I obviously don't do a whole lot in Power Apps, but I have that same experience with JSON. I don't know if you've done much with JSON, but when you're defining elements inside of JSON, you put a comma between all of them, but you don't put a comma after the last one. So it's like the Oxford comma argument. But what ends up happening is you end up probably the same with Power Apps. You end up cutting and pasting things and moving things around, and then you either have a comma at one that used to be in the middle, but now is the last because you took one out that you don't need, or you paste one at the end. All this stuff, and I don't do it enough to catch that all the time, and I hate that. So I wish JSON had that same flexibility.
So in Power Apps, some of our functions use a JSON, they don't call it JSON, but it is JSON. And so we have that same comma problem. I'm guessing since the blog post you referenced did not mention that they fixed that one, I bet we still have that problem too.
Yeah, that's a big standard. That's not a Microsoft thing.
Yeah. But yeah, and so the other weird thing, since we're talking about commas and semicolons,
yeah.
And so in Power Apps, one of the things they did was they tried to localize the formula language.
Okay.
Which means that basically if you're a country that uses a comma as a decimal separator, right here in the US, right, it's 100.00 is $100.00. In some countries, it's 100,00.
Yep.
So if you're in a country that uses the comma as a decimal separator, what will happen is all of the formulas changed to account for that. So instead of where we use commas in the US, you use semicolons. Where we use semicolons, you use double semicolons. And they had the best intentions, right? They're like, all right, we're going to make this, people feel right in their local language. But what it does, it kills people because the world is so, so much sharing happens. So if I share a formula that works for me, but you're in, I think, Spain, for example.
Yeah, Europe does the comma thing, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're in one of those countries, all of a sudden you copy my formula and you're like, this doesn't work. Shane's so stupid. Why did he lie to me? And it's because you have to change the commas and the semicolons. But it's not like a one-for-one. It's, like I said, one semicolon becomes two semicolons, but a comma becomes a semicolon. So that's an example of great intentions that has really played out poorly in the community.
Yeah, I'm guessing you could automate that because we've had to do that before with PowerShell with string replacement stuff. You have to do it in a very specific order because things become other things. Yeah, that's a good intentions, but man, what a pain.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's very difficult to explain to people as well. Yeah. So there's and Mark Crispin's put in the chat room about the dates. So we do have pretty easy ways of changing MMDDYYY to DDMMMYYY. The weirdness in the way they do dates, all that's pretty easy to account for. It's really just the formula language changing. Oh.
Yeah, because in the date one, it's the same values, they're just in a different order, but with the punctuation one, it's actually different numbers of punctuation, 2 semicolons and period. Oh yeah, that would be a pain. Holy cow.
Yeah, so something to keep in, since you're always trotting around in Europe, when you're sharing all your awesome Power Apps, I want to make sure you knew that those guys may or may not, right? 'Cause it's very specific countries, right? The UK doesn't do it. Spain does it. France, I think, does the commas, but I don't think Germany does. Right? I mean, it's a country by country thing.
Yeah. So a couple of the folks in the chat were mentioning that in the military, they do the date, day, month, 3-letter abbreviation, and then year. So like my birthday is 21 Jan. So there's no way to mess it up because you can't, but that's one thing, at least with the U.S. military, they do a lot of the really smart stuff like that, and it's all metric in the military. So everything's kilometers and all that. So they, yeah, good stuff.
If only we as a country could move to the metric system.
So it's funny, all the traveling we've done. When I was at the summit, we went up to Vancouver, which is in, Columbia, British Columbia, Canada. They always use the metric system there. When I was in Europe, so I've been bouncing back and forth and having these discussions with a lot of non-Americans, and it is just silly. I don't know. I don't know if I told you this story. My niece was with us, and we rented a car in Seattle, and at SeaTac, and then drove to Bellevue. And man, it got really hot in the car really fast. And so I'm like, man, is somebody playing with the heat? And our niece was in the back, and they had the heat controls in the back. And she's like, yeah, I turned the heat on because it was cold, but it's all in metric. I don't know what any of the numbers are in metric. And I'm like, well, like 24, 25 is room temperature, 70 something. She's like, so is 35 hot? Like, yes, that's why the windshield's currently melting. Yes, So in the car, I switched it from metric to standard or imperial. But then when we went into Canada, well, everything up there, the vehicle was in metric, but then all the road signs are in metric. So my wife's driving around. She's like, all right, well, where's my next turn? I'm like, it's 3 kilometers away. She's like, I don't know what that means. What is that? So in my head, I'm having to do all the all right, 3 times 0.6, 10K is 6.2 miles. So I'm going to do all this translating in my head. Just silly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the Fahrenheit to Celsius, you did it, right? The easiest one to know is that 70, our temperature is 21 point something theirs, right? And so if you use that, it kind of gives you a good jumping off place for all those fun things.
Yeah, it's and the 1 degree Celsius is 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, so you can, it's but it's just silly that we have to do that this day and age. And I think the United States is like one of 3 countries in the world that doesn't use metric. And then the UK, you talk about that, they do it all weird. Too funny. Back to tech stuff. One of the things, this was something else I put in the notes. One of the things that we always tell people is never test in production. The line that we stole, and I wish we knew who we stole it from, was, the question isn't whether you have a test environment. The question is whether you have a production environment. And with Office 365, that gets really tough because you can't just spin up another whatever. So there's a number of ways to handle it. For the longest time, people who signed up as developers with Microsoft could get a developer tenant to do stuff in, but it was limited and it ran out. Last week or the week before, Microsoft revamped the whole developer tenant thing, and they put it where it auto renews. So if you use it at least once every 90 days, it just stays going. So you can go in there, you can test your code, you can do whatever, and not have to worry about testing in your production tenants. That's really cool.
Yeah, there's so many of those options today, right? There's not an excuse not to, because everybody's like, oh, IT has me locked down, I don't know what to do. And I always tell people, hey, if IT's got you locked down, right, go spin up a developer tenant or a community tenant or a trial tenant, right? You need to go spin up an Office 365 where you are the king of the castle, and then you figure out what the setting is you want to have changed. And if you send it to IT and say, hey, click this button, this button, and this button to enable this feature I want, IT's pretty lazy, right? As former IT guys, I think we can say that.
Absolutely.
If someone says, here's the step-by-step for you to make this change, and they'll go away if I just click on the 4 things they've shown me screenshots of, there's a good chance I'm going to click those buttons. Whereas if they come to me and say, hey, I need to be able to do more sharing, blah, 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 blah. That sounds like work and thinking. I'm probably not going to help them. Our policy says
I'm not going to trust it. And it's funny. So that was something that I was going to blog a while back, as all the different places you can test that. And I can't remember if I blogged it or I just thought about blogging it. So I should check that because that's something I should update if they've changed that. But yeah, I agree. There's no excuse these days. You and I think, get lazy because we've got the Microsoft trial tenants, the demo tenants, which are just amazing. But not everybody has that. So these tenants are good.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I'm still struggling with in the Power App space is basically all of my demos, all my playing is in our production tenant. And I need not to, but at the same time, I don't want to deal with moving it all, and I don't want to spin it up and down, and I'm doing it completely wrong. But
Yes.
but I'm not going to change what I'm doing.
Well, you got profiles in your browsers and all that. There's ways to do it. Oh, and that brings up another thing. So we'll jump ahead to F there. I think you and I both use Chrome on Windows as our daily driver for a browser, and it's been treated me very well. I've been a Chrome guy for several years now. I've made a lot of hay out of making fun of Microsoft Edge because it is just absolutely horrible. And Microsoft mentioned here a couple months ago, they're switching over to a Chromium-based browser for Edge.
Yeah.
And then they started releasing demos for it a couple of weeks ago. And I've played with it, and it's not horrible. It mostly feels exactly like Chrome, almost.
That's a compliment, I think.
It is. So one of the things that I bought this Surface Go here a couple of months ago. Love it. Big fan of the Surface Go. It comes in Windows S mode, which means you can't install any binaries. You can only install binaries from Microsoft or things from the Microsoft Store.
Right.
So I've been playing with that. The Go isn't my daily driver, so those limitations aren't so bad. The two big limitations for me, though, and I've not switched it out of S mode yet, the two big things that I haven't liked is I can't install Chrome. I have to use Edge or IE, and I can't run PowerShell. So for PowerShell, I fixed it, and actually for the browser too, I fixed it by just using an Azure virtual machine. So I've got an Azure virtual machine that is my machine that I do stuff on that I can't do with Go. And that's worked pretty well, but I understand everybody doesn't have that option. So when Edge came out with this dev thing, I'm like, all right, I will put it on the Go because I can install that. And that's where I started doing it, and it's actually not too bad. And it has a couple of the features that I really like in Chrome. Well, I guess one of them is profiles. So now I can, because that was one of the things I struggled with on the Go is I couldn't do profiles. So then I was back to the whole, I can have Edge and in private mode, I can have IE in private mode. And that was kind of a pain, but now with Edge, I've got the profiles. So that's working. The profiles don't sync like they do in Chrome yet. I think that's on the roadmap, but it's not there yet. But it's treated me pretty well.
But in Chrome, they only sync if you log in with a Google account, right?
Correct. Yes. So if you're not using profiles, I've got a blog post on it, and I don't know if Lori's in a spot where she can throw that in the chat room or put it in the notes. But you can have profiles, which mean you can have separate memory spaces for browsers. So for like Shane and I, you can be logged into Office 365 as multiple users, not just two in private and whatever. And if you log in that profile as a Gmail account, then you can sync your passwords and your favorites and all your form stuff, which is just amazing because everything's in the cloud these days. So that's great. But that only works with Gmail accounts. Now, what I have done is I've created Gmail accounts to sync specific things. And so that has worked out pretty well. With Edge, with the dev channel of Edge, you can create profiles if you're using a Hotmail account. So they call those MSAL, Microsoft Authentication, something. Then your favorites will sync, but nothing else yet. I think the plan is that the passwords and all that stuff will sync, but I think right now it's just favorites. If you want to use an Office 365 account, like my main account, like your main account, those do not sync. You can't create a profile on them. You have to go in and set a flag inside of Edge for that, and then you can turn those on and you can create a profile based on that. But right now, nothing syncs with those. And again, the plan is that will all sync. So that's what I'm working with right now.
Yeah. Well, so while you were just rambling, just to speak of how much I use this feature, I have 29 Chrome profiles today, but not only one of them is tied to a Gmail setup, so only one of them syncs. The other 28 are all customer accounts. So like on my Surface Book, I have like 7 of those, the ones I have to do when I'm on the road over there. Yep. So It's a lot to maintain, but it makes my life so much better that it is worth whatever effort, whatever. If Google wanted to charge me for it, I would pay for the feature. That's how important this feature has become in my life.
Yep. So I saw you were taking your shoes off and your lips were moving, so that was because you were counting. So that yep. So I have 19 on my on mine. Yes.
Once
so,
again, my list is bigger.
But I am syncing more with Gmail. I am syncing 3 with Gmail. So so obviously I've got my own Gmail account that I use. The podcast has one, so I use that one. And then I have a bunch of work passwords and favorites and all that. So I created a Gmail account solely for the purpose of using that to sync. And
that makes sense.
That works really well. Pulls in the icon. So, but Chrome's got that stuff coming. Jeff Hicks in the chat room put in a link for a Windows Weekly show about that, so I'll throw that in the show notes as well. But the Chrome stuff and extensions work. Chrome extensions work, if not some of the Chrome extensions work now in the new Edge. So that's good. But I've not hated it. So because of the syncing, I've installed it on a couple of boxes besides the Go. Haven't hated it. So check that out. If you go to MicrosoftEdgeInsiders.com, you can download it and get that.
Very nice. Where is our terrible list of stuff? There was one I wanted to transition into, and I got confused and forgot that fast. Because that's what happens. I'm old, Todd. I'm old. What about A? Were we going to did you want to do the?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think you all, if you listen to this podcast and you don't know this information already, then you are dead to us. I think you all know that Game of Thrones happened on Sunday evening.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did the thing that most of the world did. I signed up for an HBO Now account Sunday afternoon.
It was Thursday evening for me, but yeah.
Oh, you got preemptive?
Yeah.
See, so I watched Tiger win the Masters, and as soon as that was over, then I sat down, I set up HBO Now, and so I was able to watch the show at 9 o'clock on Sunday evening, and I was not disappointed. It was not amazing, but it was correct. And I think the big thing we want, so we'll talk about generically here for a second, but no spoilers, right?
Nope,
Let's be very clear.
No spoilers.
We're not going to spoil anything for you until the end of the show. So we get to the end of the show and it's over. We're going to leave the mic. Yep. We'll say goodbye. And then Todd and I are going to have our conversation. And if you're the nosy type and want to listen to Todd and I talk about it because you're nosy, then Todd and I will let that recording play on while we chat about what we thought of the show.
Yeah, and if you're listening to the recorded version, I don't think we'll have it. I'll have to figure out if we'll throw that at the end or put that out as a separate episode or what. Because we have to leave it recording for those guys to see it. Yeah.
I think we just leave it on the end of the recording. We just say, hey, if you're right, hit the button in your car that says go to the next podcast if you don't want to hear, but we're about to spoil everything.
Yep.
Full view. So.
And Mark says that he got it with his PS View subscription. That's exactly what I did. And that's kind of a clunky way to do it because you have to sign up for an HBO Go account and then do a thing to tie it to your View account. It took longer than I expected it to.
Yeah, so I went the other way. I went straight to HBO Now and did HBO Now via the Roku account. So I'm paying through Roku, but that was super easy compared to trying to go through the PlayStation View, which they were going to make it really, really difficult.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't really difficult, but it was more difficult than it needed to be by a long shot. And then I'm thinking about switching to YouTube TV, but now I won't because Game of Thrones is now connected to my PlayStation View account, so I'm not going to touch any of that. But yeah, so it was fun. Yeah, so we'll talk about that at the end of the show.
Yeah. And I did a trial of YouTube TV during March Madness just to see. Yeah. Sometimes PlayStation View's picture quality is not as spectacular, I think, as it can be on basketball, like fast moving, lots of this.
Okay.
And I thought that YouTube TV had a little bit better of a picture quality. So
I certainly believe that YouTube understands that whole video distribution thing better than PlayStation does. So I can see all that. They do a lot of crazy things in the background to make that better. The thing, and this is just pure laziness on my part, use PlayStation View. I've used it for a couple of years now. Mostly happy with it. A couple little UI things I don't like, but for the most part, I'm content. I bought a couple of new TVs within the last few months, Vizio TVs, and they have apps built in, which are normally crap. Yeah. These are crap, but crap that's good enough. So like the last one that I put up, I've not put the Roku behind it. I actually bought the Roku And it's sitting next to the TV, but I'm like, I'll give these apps a shot. And it's got Netflix and it's got YouTube and most of the other stuff we watch, but it doesn't have a PS View app. But it does have a YouTube TV app. So I'm thinking about doing it just to keep from having to use the Roku for TV.
Interesting.
Prices are the same, channels are the same.
Yeah, no, it's like you, right? It's momentum. I've had PlayStation View for a year and a half now, and changing just would be really, really tough. But no, so speaking of pain and suffering, so we watch, primarily these days we watch Netflix, right? Because really by the time the kids go to bed, we just find some irreverent TV show and we just let it play in the background and we zone out. But we've watched like The Office about 7 times now. We've watched New Girl 3 times through, and we're kind of at our wits' end with those for the moment. So Nicola said, I want to jump back and watch Cougar Town, which she actually owns the DVDs for. So I have had to deal with turning on a DVD player, putting in a disc, and Todd, I can't do justice for how terrible it has been using a bad word DVD player for the last couple of weeks. My wife can watch Cougar Town. So I don't know. I mean, I talk to me here. This is tough.
Well, I mean, I love Nicola. She's a great person. The best wife that you would ever get. You'd never do better. But I don't know if I'd put up with all that. I mean, boy, and I don't even know if I remember all the mechanics. So there's like stuff that moves and there's stuff you can break and lose.
You have to wait on the disc to cache.
Oh my God, with the spinning. Oh, again with the spinning. Wow, that's so Cougar Town's not available on any streaming.
So it's on Hulu, but I don't want to pay. Yeah. It's on a couple of places, right? But I own it. I own the disc, and so paying someone else to watch the things that I have just so I don't have to click on a DVD player has crossed my mind, but I've not crossed the line of giving someone my dollars, so I didn't have to use a DVD player.
Yeah, boy. I mean, I love my wife a lot. I don't know if I love her that much. Like, I would have to find a DVD player, and then like all of our TVs are hanging on the wall, so there's not even a place to put the DVD player. Like, boy, the logistics of that's like sounds like an all afternoon deal.
Yeah, well, yeah, and so I struggle, right? So several people, right? They're chiming in the chat room now, right? Why don't I just move to Plex, right? I know 1,000 people with Plexes and Plex servers. I can just go get it, but for whatever reason, I've always been very anti borrowing content, and so I don't know. I mean, is there even? So if I want to stay 100% legal, right? Is there a legal way for me to take my DVD and turn it into a digital copy, or is it just not a truly
yes. So there's different aspects of that. So if you want to stay true to the spirit of the law and all of that, yes, you can. So what you would have to do is rip your DVDs that you own,
okay,
save them as MP4 files or whatever, and then serve them up on Plex. Never get rid of your DVDs. Never let anybody but you or your wife watch the things that you've got, and you're fair, within the fair use of the thing. Now, there's a couple of things, and I haven't read up on the Digital Millennium Copyright Act recently, the DMCA, but there was some stuff in there about breaking encryption. But honestly, the DVD encryption is the horse is out on that. But yeah, I think you could do it. I would have again. I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to respect intellectual property. You could do that with a clear conscience.
So let's see. I'm seeing DVD fab and Handbrake. I mean, is this like an all afternoon? I mean, right? This is another thing, right? Is it going to cost me more time to rip this DVD than it does fiddling with 4 remotes to do it? I mean, is this
for DVDs? No. For Blu-rays, yes. So DVDs, the encryption is static. Every DVD is encrypted with the same keys. Those keys those have been out in the wild for 20 years now. So everything can read DVDs, unless they do some crazy stuff. But for the most part, DVDs. Blu-rays have this ability, or Blu-ray players have to be able to update new chains. So if you've got a Blu-ray, it can be encrypted with a string that hasn't been released yet. So your player has to get it, so it makes it tougher for the stuff to download it. But for DVDs, it wouldn't take long.
Okay, because I don't have any Blu-rays. I went HD DVD for a while, and we saw where that ended up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know. At some point, maybe you're gonna have to sit me down and be like, Shane, download this, click this button.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm not really sure is if I even have a DVD reader, like in any computer that's actually plugged in. I that might be another part of this challenge for me.
Yeah. So I had a buddy who got married, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, and had all of his wedding pictures on DVDs. And he can't read them. And he's like, hey, can you try to read these for me? I'm like, oh, absolutely. And yeah, I have one machine in my house, I think, that has, I've got some servers that do virtualization stuff, but like one workstation-y thing that's got a DVD reader in it. It's my desktop machine. It just happened to come with it. Yeah, so that's getting to be a thing where there's just not going to be. But yeah, we can get Nick hooked up with Cougar Town at her convenience.
Yeah, I mean, because I know like one of the reasons a lot of people do it, right, is it's the whole idea that your kids destroy DVDs and things like that. And you don't want to buy it makes a lot of sense. I've never done it. So, but the chat room is fired up, right? The chat room is on fire with this topic.
These people are on. Yes, they. Yeah. We'll hook you up if you're interested. We'll hook you up. I don't want to push you into anything. I know I sometimes make things technical for technology's sake. When it's right for you, Shane. When you're ready.
Oh, I mean, be gentle.
I will. Loving caress.
Okay. Well, we're kind of getting towards the end of the show. What anything else? Oh, I want to throw out real quick, G. So I know a bunch of you are SharePoint superstars. I am a pretend SharePoint superstar at this point in my life, especially when it comes to SharePoint Online. And so one of the things that we've been using is we were using a highlighted content web part. All right, that's that one that kind of you can roll up data, so you roll up document libraries or tasks, and you can say roll up from this site, roll up from all the hub sites. You know, you get some different options. This is a pretty nice roll up web part that is now built into SharePoint Online. And so in one of my customers, we've been doing it, and we've been rolling up, and one of our filter criteria has been the assigned to. So we're using task.
Okay.
We wanted to use the assigned to field, and we wanted to have people see their task. So we used assigned to equals brackets me, which is the formula syntax that SharePoint views use.
For 20 years, yeah.
Yeah. It's worked for a long time. We were real happy with it. Customer sends me an urgent email on Saturday. It stopped working. And so I went and tested in his environment and mine. I've created new web parts. And basically, at the end of the day, assigned to equals bracket me just doesn't work anymore.
They just shut it off.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I guess this is my plea to the audience here. Has anyone found a way to do what I want to do without using bracket me? Or is it bracket me's? Is it bracket you? Right?
Bracket this?
Because I noticed in the built-in filters now, one of the options is you can do, because there's like options you can filter on that are hard-coded versus going and picking a managed property and filtering.
Right.
And I found that there is one that says, filter where creator is current user. Mm-hmm. But that's a hard-coded one. So I've tried like current user in brackets. I've tried current user without brackets. But I can't figure out how to translate current user into syntax that assigned to works. So
I would have argued to the death today that brackets me still worked. And bracket today, I mean, there's just a whole bunch of those. That would stink if that's intentional. If it's not just a bug, if they took that out, never to return, that would be very sad.
Yeah, I posted on Twitter at SP Help. No one chimed in. Like, no one chimed in to tell me I was stupid and it still works. I've tried it in 2 different tenants.
Yeah.
And assigned to equals me, or bracket me, just doesn't work. So.
Well, hopefully, if you've heard the sound of Shane's voice, let us know. You can hit us up on Twitter. Leave a comment at toddclint.com/podcast429. Tell Shane he's stupid. Tell him to fix. Tell him both. I don't care.
Hell, you can call me at home if you know the answer to this question.
I've got his number, so just let me know.
I don't actually have a home phone number, so it's interesting you have it.
I've got your cell phone number. So that's interesting. I haven't ran into that. I'll ask Mark and Julie. Maybe they've stumbled across that or know some people to ask.
Yeah. All right. Should we kind of round up?
Yeah. So you got a new phone. Do you want to spend a couple of minutes talking about that?
We can. I finally broke down and bought myself an iPhone XR.
And that was for folks that aren't privy to Shane and I's private conversations. That was a big step for Shane. Big step. I was shocked, and when I got done being shocked, I was proud but concerned that maybe he'd taken a hit to the head, because not getting a new phone was a very big part of Shane. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been on an iPhone 7 Plus since pretty much the day the 7 Plus came out. And so when I didn't buy the XR the day it came out, you would have assumed I was waiting on the next one to... But my 7 Plus, it had a lot of network and internet problems that they won. I just couldn't handle it.
Which is funny because his 7 Plus has had these exact same problems for years now, and Shane and I have discussed it ad nauseum that it is the phone. It's not AT&T's fault. It's not his internet provider. It's the phone. Like him and I would be standing next to each other with AT&T phones. He would have no signal. I would be talking to somebody, in Bolivia, and he'd be like, "Oh, AT&T sucks." I'm like, "No." So it's amazing that this actually got through. I
know it was. I don't know what happened, but I woke up one morning, and then I decided I was going to do it for sure. But then there was do I want the iPhone XR, the XS, the XS Plus, and for what I was pretty sure I was going to buy the XS Plus, right? Because that was the biggest, the baddest. But some of the reviews I read basically said that actually the XR was better than the XS Plus, even though the XS Plus costs more. The XS Plus has an OLED screen. Mm-hmm. Mine does not. Mine has some other lesser form of screen, but
sad.
Better than what I had before. And that was like one of the key differences. But apparently the architecture, it was complicated. On a whim, I bought the XR. And one of the big reasons, though, the prices on the iPhones, I'm sure, as you know, have gotten out of control.
They're very expensive.
Very expensive. And I knew that Apple was struggling to sell enough of them. So I kept thinking, well, they'd bring the prices down. But then, Nicole and I kind of had that, super nerdy financial conversation around it. And I realized they probably couldn't bring the prices down. And so what they did to avoid lowering the prices is that they do trade-ins now. And the trade-in, they gave me $300 for my old, crappy, terrible phone. I was like, this is how you deal with a pricing problem, right? You don't change the pricing because Wall Street would freak out if you lower that price. Yep. You just quietly give me $300 to trade this piece of crap in, and I'm happy because I got the price point back to a reasonable number, and they're happy because they sold some more phones. Yeah,
and there's Planet Money, I think, had an episode a while back about the whole black market behind that. Well, not necessarily black market, but white market even, about what happens to those phones and what Apple and Verizon do with those phones. And it's a big, complicated machine, as you can imagine. So I think part of it is they've got that machine figured out so they can do better trade-ins all those pieces fit together.
Yeah. But kudos to them that as a consumer, it got me to a number that I was comfortable spending on a phone.
Yeah. So I wasn't going to talk about this. You and I kvetched about this earlier. I tried to do a similar thing this weekend, tried to buy a new phone and was not able to. And I was at an AT&T store and trying to buy a phone that had, so Kyle in the chat room says he's a no contract kind of guy. I'm the same way for, a decade probably. Every phone that my wife and I have had, we've paid cash for outright, no contracts, unlocked them, complete freedom. That's the way that's worked best for us. And tried to buy a new phone this weekend. Went to the AT&T store, found the phone that I wanted. It had the, pay outright price on it, along with the other stuff. Tried to buy it, and they would not sell it to me without putting it on a plan, without putting it on an installment plan. And even though I pointed to the sign that said, here's the price. I want to pay this price for this thing. And the guy's like, yeah, I won't sell it to you for that. You got to put it on a thing. And in a month after you've made a couple of payments, you can switch it over and do the thing, but you can't just buy it outright. So I didn't buy the phone. Cost them a sale. It was, I was mad.
Yeah, right. What a terrible story. You walked in there with essentially a bunch of hundreds of dollars of bills in your hand and said, "Here, I want to give you this stack of hundreds of dollars of bills." Yep. And they wouldn't take it because they really wanted to put you on a payment plan so they could, get that little 1%, mark on this and these guys on the kickback on this. And right, it's such a complicated formula of how they make money on these things now that they couldn't bear to bring themselves to trade stacks of money for a phone.
Yeah, and I'd like to think that I was an easy consumer because he didn't have to explain anything to me. Like he got done helping the person before me, and I just walked over and said, I want that phone. I didn't ask him a single question. There was no time in his part, nothing. Just sell me that phone. And so you and I have talked, this is a discussion we've had for many years about how you incent salespeople specifically. And you have to be very careful because whatever you incent them on is the only thing that they will do. And so, clearly Chris, the guy that I was talking to, this was not his fault. It was not his policy. He would have been happy to do whatever. But somewhere up the line, this was a franchise phone, franchise company. So, AT&T's incenting them by how many people they sign up for the next things or whatever. And so that company just said, well, I know how we can maximize this. We will force everybody to do this. And then, and that's exactly what happened. So I may end up going to LG and buying it. I may go to Best Buy. So I was so mad when this happened. I actually, while this guy is trying to explain to my wife and I about this, I got on the phone with Best Buy. I called Best Buy in front of this guy to find out if they had the phone in stock. But I got stuck in the queue at Best Buy on the phone tree, so I couldn't actually talk to anybody. But I was steamed. I'm like, sell me the phone. Yes, very frustrated.
Yeah. Now, one of to that whole franchise model, right? So one of my students in one of those Power Apps in a Day classes that I taught, he owned a dozen of one of the providers' franchises. And yeah, I mean, it was absolutely about, he needs these guys to sell this thing, so he hits this number, so he gets his free trip to Hawaii or whatever, right? To celebrate his stores selling this many of this particular contract type. And yeah, so yeah, right. Why would that guy let you... That phone and that cash does him no good. He needs you to buy it on that plan so he gets his quarter of a micro% towards his whatever trip.
Yep. So yeah, so I need to look into that. And then, so people in the chat room wisely are suggesting that I just go right to the manufacturer. May do that as well. I need to research it though, because I know there are things that sometimes you don't get if you don't buy the carrier specific version of the phone. Wi-Fi calling is one of those things. I know that's something that they have to approve, and I want to make sure I can get all that before I buy it directly from the manufacturer. But man, what a pain. And I like to, so I know it's not local business because it's a corporate thing and the franchise is actually owned in Des Moines, not Ames. But I like giving business to those local businesses because that Chris guy, he needs a job and people need to buy phones there for Chris to have a job. And I wanted to do that and wouldn't sell me a phone.
Yep. No, right now we've talked about this on the show before, but I'm 100% believer. If I go into a store to touch something, if they have it, I'm going to buy it from them. Right? It's going to cost more than Amazon. I get that, but that's the deal. I want to be able to go touch the thing. If I'm going to touch the thing, I have to pay more for that.
Yeah.
So the same. So the Easter Bunny I hear is going to bring my children a basketball yard guard. It's this thing that like sits behind the goal so the ball doesn't go down the hill. And Amazon has it for I don't know, like $180, but they can't get it to me for like 2 weeks. And the Easter Bunny needs it by Sunday.
By Easter, yeah.
Yeah. So so one of the local places has it, and but it's like $240, right? It's like 50% more, but they have it in stock, and I want it in stock, and I want that option to be available in the future. Yeah. So I'm going to go pay $240 for the darn thing, or not me, the Easter Bunny is going to pay $240 for this thing to get it to my house on Sunday. And I mean, I didn't try to be like, oh, it's this price on Amazon or whatever. I get it. They have different costs associated with a physical store that I can show up tomorrow at 12:30 and pick it up at.
Yeah, they have to pay to have things in stock, and you're paying the free convenience. That's exactly it. You're not, the price you pay is not the absolute dollar that it costs somebody to manufacture something. There's all these other things built in, and yeah, one of the things you're paying for is the convenience of walking in and grabbing it and walking out. So
good luck, Easter Bunny, getting that.
Yeah. So I think that's it for the rants that I have. We got some community stuff going on. Daniel Glenn's doing a SharePoint Saturday in Nashville, June 15th. Dan Christian's doing one in Charlotte here on August 10th. So I'm not going to either one of those. I don't know if anybody else is, but want to give those guys a shout out, hang out with that. I am going to SharePoint Saturday Atlanta on May 11th. I think I'm talking about groups there, maybe a couple of things. I've been doing a lot with site scripts and site designs lately, and I pitched that one to Dan. I don't know if that one's going to make it or not, but I will be around there. Lori will be there as well, so if you'd like to meet Lori or I, go to SharePoint Saturday Atlanta. Oh, and one thing I wanted to bring up, when we always tell folks when we're doing this part, if you see us at a conference, come up and say, hey, we're friendly folks, all that kind of stuff. When I was in Sweden here, however many weeks ago, the last month is a blur, many people came up and did that. Many people came up and introduced themselves to me. And I know sometimes Europeans are a little quieter, a little more reserved. And it was awesome. And I think, I don't remember if we talked about it at Branson, the same thing happened. So absolutely, if you see me one of these places or see Shane, just come up, introduce yourself. It's not weird. It's not embarrassing. We love talking to you folks. So absolutely do that. It was a good time. So, and two of the folks, I did 2 sessions in Sweden. The first one was on groups, and the second one was on PowerShell. And two guys came up and introduced themselves to me. They'd been in the groups thing, and they're like, "Hey, we're really excited about your PowerShell thing tomorrow." I'm like, "Hey, me too. I love me some PowerShell." They're like, "Hey, are you going to cover this, this, and this?" And I was like, "I am now." It was just stuff that I had never had to do, but they had to do. So I worked it in, and it worked out great for everybody. So absolutely do that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah, it means a lot to us, right? When you come up and say that. I mean, it's basically, think it almost as your form of payment to us, right? Just saying, "Hey, I've watched the show. I've
Exactly.
Right? It's what keeps us going. Because I mean, let's be honest. We talked about it before the show, right? But Todd and I don't make any money from doing the show. It's really about our egos and you stopping and saying hello, right? I mean, am I lying?
I mean, I can't argue.
Okay,
Yeah.
but so come and say hello, and that feeds the ego, which keeps us going. And or if you don't want the show to happen, tell us we stink. No, that'll make us do more shows too.
Try harder. Yeah, and it's all about just knowing that it helps people. That's why we do this stuff. A lot of it's ego, but it's all about knowing that we've helped. And so people come up and like, "Oh, I love the podcast. I learned so much. I love your blog." It absolutely is the fuel that keeps us going. So,
yes.
So be cool about it. Yeah. Don't be embarrassed. It's all good. Shane and I will be at the SharePoint conference in sunny Las Vegas, and you can go to sharepointna.com. The conference proper is the 21st through the 23rd, but Shane and I, well, we're doing a little special gig on Monday the 20th. We're going to do an all-day admin workshop. It's going to be on-prem admin, cloud admin, all the jokes that we've amassed over the years. It's all going to be there. Yeah. So come find us for that.
I have to find a way to get wedge Power Apps into it. I will. Don't you worry.
I absolutely. I'm guessing if you haven't shown Power Apps by 10 or 10:30 in the morning, I'll be surprised.
I have to. Maybe I'll come up with a Power Apps app to manage your on-prem admin somehow.
I've got some ideas for that. If you could do it.
No, I was kidding.
I've got some ideas.
So then, speaking of Hotlanta, I will be back there for the Microsoft Business Application Summit, June 9th through the 11th.
Very exciting.
Still they haven't locked down all the sessions and things, so I don't know what my schedule looks like. But don't you worry. If you're going to be there, I will be there. I want a hug. Just come give me a hug. It's how I roll. So.
Yep, Shane is certainly on board with the uncomfortable Joe Biden hugs. He loves them. If you want to put your hands on his shoulder and whisper in his ears, he's cool with that. Don't even worry about it.
Yeah, and I don't have a bald spot yet, so you can kiss the back of my head without issue. So.
Oh, that's good stuff. And I also have another remote user group thing coming up that hasn't finalized yet, but I'll be finishing that up. And I'd like to bring that up. Shane and I do the remote user group stuff all the time. So if you've got a user group and you can take speakers remotely, and you're super desperate, can't find anybody to talk to, reach out to Shane or I. We'll probably hook you up. We'd love to do it.
Yep. Oh, something like Gloria and we got to talk Herman coming over to Business Application Summit. So that'll be nice.
Great stuff. I think that's all I have. We're come up to the top of the hour.
Yeah.
So
Daniel would like to remind you that I'm tall, so you might need a stepping stool to hug me.
Yep. Stand on a chair.
Well, yeah. So I think is this way we say goodbye to everyone, and then we're going to switch to the spoilers.
Yep. So we are all done with the tech podcast. So goodbye, everybody. Have a good week. But Shane and I are going to continue to talk about Game of Thrones. Spoilers abound, and we will probably forget to stop recording. So if you don't want to hear about the first episode of season 8 of Game of Thrones, if you don't want it to be spoiled, or you just don't care, good night. Have a good day. If not, for the next 10 or 15 minutes, we'll talk about Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and let's set some ground rules on our spoilers as well. I mean, right. Goodbye. But so on the spoilers though, only season 1. I know there's only episode 1, right? I know there's some like spoilers. We're not talking about anything that has been released. I've purposely not read those myself. So this is just watched episode 1 spoilers.
I have avoided everything for this season. I have decided to let this season play out the way that the writers and the directors intended it to. So I have not read a single thing, nothing. Total ignorance.
All right, there you go. The Brett pasted some stuff. All right, so episode 1, I thought was it was fine. It was good. And I think someone explained it to me well, right? It was this whole idea that we knew everything, but the characters all had to come back together and tell each other all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was mostly what the episode I think was about, right? It was reconnecting the characters so they could know all the things that we know, so everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, and that was one of the things. I've read all the books. Well, of course, the TV show is way past the books now. But there was a bunch of books and a bunch of the TV show that was just people moving around. It was just like a travel log. And while that was okay, and I understood that it was setting the stage for stuff, it got really boring. my wife and I watched the last season in preparation for this episode, and last season, about halfway through, all that traveling started to stop. And like you said, people started to end up talking to each other and started to get into places where stuff was going to happen. And that was, yes, episode 1 of season 8 was that. So we found out, John found out about John, something that we've, thought about for 5 years now. He found out for sure. Had some real awkward moments about what that meant in his romantic life and other things.
Yeah, that's so Jeff just asked, right? How do you see it playing out when Jon tells Daenerys? I mean, I can't imagine she's going to roll over and be like, "Oh, well, then instead of me being the queen, you be the king, and I'll."
No. So I think it'll be a couple things. So I think on some level she has to know because she has done little Targaryen tests with him. Like, for instance, they said a while back, nobody but Targaryens can fly dragons, and
Yes.
she's like, "Hey, Jon, want to hop on the old dragon?" He's like, "Ugh," but he gets. So I mean, I think in some part of her mind she has some idea whether she overtly knows or not. I don't think she's going to give up the power that easily. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and we also have to remember that while we think this is super creepy, right? That in reality, I mean, Jaime and Cersei are actively having children, and it's no big, right? So
what? And the Targaryens were well known for that too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. So the incest, or it's not even really incest, but whatever, the interbreeding is not super crazy to them. So I don't know. It's more about the power than I think of the ickiness of them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not weirded out by the whatever relationship they have.
So she's his aunt. Her brother Rhaegar was his dad.
Right. I've never had a hot aunt, so I don't know how I'd feel about making out with my aunt.
Yeah. So in the stories, that family, the Targaryen family, was well known for all that, which is how the Mad King happened. Because that, and honestly, in real life, that's how the royal families in Europe and all that have done for thousands of years. So it's not that crazy. It is funny that. When we watch the first episode of the first season, we find out about Jaime and Cersei, and we're like, "Oh, that's gross." And then we find out about Jon and Dany. Then I was like, "Yeah." Our view on incest changes significantly depending on how much we like the characters.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of Cersei and Jaime, so where do you fall on pregnancy gate? Right? Is she pregnant with Jaime's baby? Is she pregnant with Dummy, the guy? Euron's baby? Is she not pregnant with anyone's baby?
I suspect it's Jaime's. I think if she is, I mean, she's a horrible person. She would lie to anybody about anything. But she's had 3 kids with Jaime before, so that's not off the table. Yeah.
But then the whole prophecy, right, from like season 1, where she would only have 3 kids, so she's probably not pregnant at all.
Yeah. It's tough to tell, and I guess I would have to figure out what value it would have of her to lie to him about that.
To lie to who?
Jaime. To tell him she was pregnant with his kid.
Well, because Jaime was about ready to be done with her, right? Jaime was at his wit's end with her, so that was a way, right? That's the whole breakup thing, yeah, right? Oh, I'm breaking up with you. I'm pregnant. Oh, okay, I guess I'm staying with you.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm trying to convince what his value to her is. I don't know. But it could be either. I mean, I don't know. Well, and so Mark in the chat room's thinking that she might miscarry. Jeff, as a good segue, Jeff's asking about what our idea is of Jaime having to kill Cersei. So that was one of the most interesting parts of this episode, was when Jaime shows up in Winterfell. And it was like, so you mentioned all the people getting together and telling stuff. Winterfell was like a convention of people who hate Jaime Lannister. Like, nobody he's ever wronged in his entire life was all inside of there. I mean, and I'd forgotten it because it's been 10 years since the show started. So his redemption story kind of happened early in the series. So we think of him as a sympathetic character now, but like you said, we know stuff that they don't know. So I think there's probably something to that, Jeff. I hadn't read that. I've read 0 theories about how this ends, but I think that would be a fitting end to his redemption story.
Yeah, well, yeah, and especially at the end, right, when Bran saw him, right, and Bran just but Bran's always got that weird look on his face, so it was really hard to say, like, was that Bran thinking, haha, I know the tree's about to eat you, or was that him just...
Bran's got a little creepy, and him just, like, sitting there, like, out in the middle of the courtyard, like, somebody push him inside, he's got to be getting cold.
Yeah. Right, and I mean, and because Bran's right, this supernatural dude, but he's apparently not doing any supernaturally things because he's just sitting in the
Three-eyed raven, yeah.
So, does he end up having a bigger like part? Like, I mean, does it turn out like is he the Night King or something stupid like that, right? I mean,
So long before this season came out, I've heard a lot of theories about that. That yes, somehow he is the Night King, or that there's so like the whole time travel thing with Hodor. That there's something where he exists in multiple planes, and that so I think Bran's going to be a more significant character in that regard. Yeah.
and if nothing else, he just has just such a dumb look on his face
Just
all
creepy,
the time.
just eerie.
Yeah, it reminds me of the girls from the scary movie, right? The little twin girls that like appear in the
Shining.
The
Yep.
Shining. Yes, yes.
I thought you meant actually Scary Movie. I'm like, I don't remember any twin girls. Scary Movie, yeah, The Shining. So yeah, it's like Jeff saying when Bran connects with the Night King, and we've seen the Night King, like when the Children of the Forest turned him into the Night King, we saw him. So I don't know how that. And another thing that Jeff brought or Mark brought up was the parentage thing. So again, Jill and I watched the last season heading up to this one, so we saw the thing where the dragon came down to the Lannister army and all that, and where Daenerys brought the Tarwells up and said, hey, bend the knee or we kill you. And old man Tarly's like, I'm done. I'm out of here. Roast me. And then the boy, Dickon, is like, yep, I'm going with dad. And she roasts him. Oof. I remember watching that episode again and thinking Tyrion is making a super duper big deal about this. Like he's really protesting a lot when it happens, and he's really bringing it up a lot after it happens. Like Tyrion's like a dog with a bone on this whole roasting the Tarwell thing. Didn't really connect the dots. Watching this episode, when she comes in and she tells Sam about it, and she's like, well, I roasted your dad. And he's like, Dad didn't really like me anyway, but now that my brother's in charge, I can go home. And she's like, ugh, about the brother. And I thought that actor did a really good job of like the range of emotions with that. I suspect Sam's going to cause her some trouble. I think he's mad about that. And I think that's why they gave that so much focus, because I think Sam's going to cause some problems.
Yeah, well, he's been reading, right? He's been, he's all
Nothing good
educated
comes
now.
from that.
Well, I mean, that's where the dragon fire or whatever came from, and so does he show up with something weird like that to kill the dragons or to, assuming that her and Jon somehow start hating each other and.
Or maybe she tries to keep Jon from being, because Sam was all, obviously Sam's loyalty's lied with Jon, and Sam's all like, Jon, you're the king. Like, no matter how you slice it, you're the guy. And so, yeah, I can see if Dany doesn't do that in a way that Sam finds agreeable, he might but that was a weird scene. You're like, oh, son of a, that's Sam's mad.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's so. And then Jeff was asking in the chat room, who do we think the first main character to get the axe is? And you kind of forgotten, right? Because it's been a while since we've killed someone that we were shocked by when we killed Ned, right? We just all like, what? No, you didn't kill Ned. So what? Who's the first main character to go this season?
I don't know. So have you and I talked about why Martin killed Ned? What his mind? So this is an interesting story, and I read this 100 years ago when it first came out. In the 90s, Martin was a writer for TV shows. And one of the big ones that he wrote was Grace Under Fire, which is, there's a comedian, I forget what her name was, Brett Butler, something like that. Anyway, he got fired from it, had just a horrible experience, left this whole writing TV shows experience just angry and bitter and mad and wants to set the world on fire. So he starts writing books. And he starts writing this, Song of Ice and Fire. And he's so mad at the TV industry that he's like, I am going to write a book that there is no possible way they will be able to put on TV. Screw those guys. I'm going to make these things so integral to the plot of the story. Incest, killing off the main characters. Like, screw those guys. They will never be able to make money off of me again. And so that's kind of, it freed him from all of those tropes that we're used to in TV shows and movies, because he just wanted to burn the whole world down. And so now you have no idea. Like, I can't even begin to guess who they're going to kill.
Or, I mean, is the argument, right, that because Martin's not really in charge anymore, right? And he was the one that liked to kill off important people. So maybe these guys don't want to kill off important people.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. So before HBO bought the series, they had to find out how it ended in case Martin died.
Yeah.
So they know generally where things are going. So they're writing off of Martin's notes. But yeah, there's minutia, and hell, Martin could change his mind for the books. I think we've got at least what, 2 books before the series is done. So yeah, it might deviate from that in some aspect. So yeah, they might not stick with that spirit. Who knows?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about who the first to go was, but
Yeah. And so they're chatting about yeah, Euron or Yara. Who's gonna go? I don't know.
yeah, and that whole the Iron people, that whole line just bores me. I wish that they could just cut the whole Ironborn people out of the show,
Yeah,
and I would have.
Theon and all that. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I think so. We got what, 6 episodes this season, 8 episodes this season,
I don't remember.
a short season. I keep thinking that everything on screen is significant in some way, shape, or form because there's just so little time. I'm not probably wrong with that. So Mark's bringing up Arya. I loved, so talking about everybody getting together. The first time that Arya and the Hound are back together, and the Hound is like, "You left me for dead." She's like, "I robbed you first." Like, what an amazing amount of courage it took for that girl who's 5 foot tall to say that to the Hound.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting, right? So he went and got his big old dragon glass axe, and now she wants this weird little tool that's.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, they both seem to feel like they're going to kill some White Walkers, but.
Uh-huh. And so we got to talk about that. There's got to be the much vaulted Clegane Bowl. Sander and Gregor gotta fight it out. The Hound in the mountain. Curious how that's going to go. And it was funny. So that's been something that people have been wondering about forever. But then rewatching last season when they meet to show the White Walker, the Hound walks up to the mountain. He's like, "I'm coming for you, brother. I'm going to be the one that gets you. You know that it is. Just setting that foundation."
Yeah, but I mean, how does that really, how do you get it back to a point where those two are standing in front of each other in a battle, right? I mean, it feels.
It will be contrived, but they've done a good job of that.
Oh no, I think they'll do it well. I don't see the path of because really at this point you think, well, we have 3 factions, right? We got everybody in Winterfell, we got the White Walkers, and we still got Cersei or not Cersei. Cersei is on New Girl.
Yeah.
Cersei. So we've still got the 3 kind of factions looking at each other, and so in order for the Hound to end up, fighting in Westeros, right? It feels like they would have already had to defeated the White Walkers, because I feel like that fight's got to happen. That fight seems like it happens in the next episode, or at least the first round of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think, so in the chat room they're talking about, does Jaime kill Cersei? Same problem, because Jaime's in Winterfell, Cersei's in King's Landing. So I think they all have to come together at some point somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of the big battle coming up, there are certain episodes of this series where there have been battles that have just been epic, and epic doesn't even begin to cover them. Hardhome was the first one, I think, that really, like, I just sat there, my mouth gaping as I watched it. But then the one where they go up north to get the White Walker and they get stuck on that island. I've watched that episode numerous times. That is just a tremendous. That was the first one where they got the band together and everybody, for me. But that one, I know how it ends. I've watched that episode numerous times. It's still like I feel so terrified for them as they're out on that thing, and there's just tens of thousands of White Walkers just waiting. I can't wait for those type of battles in this season because they are so well done.
Yeah. And then that one, right? Because in that battle, right? So then you get through it, you're like, oh, thank God, right? You kind of come down, and then poop! Here comes they're dragging the dragon out of the river or whatever,
Yeah.
And it's such like that's bad moment, right? So that was a tense, then a high, and then a womp womp, kind of all in one series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And right, because that was really the first time that we got back to this whole idea that, well, pretty much every time they kill one of you, you're going to become a White Walker, right? I mean, it's always been the case, but it was real obvious at that point that all dead people are now against you.
Well, and so they've kind of hit that because obviously, like the Night King rides a horse, so we've known that. But in that episode, they get attacked by the bear, and it really didn't seem like that was significant. But they were building up. They were reminding us this thing can happen, and Yeah, that was that episode. And boy, Dondarrion's flaming sword. Man, I would give anything to have a flaming sword. That is just the coolest weapon ever. If I had one of those things, I'd start smoking just so I could light my cigars with my flaming sword. Oh my God, that is and his voice, that character's voice is so great. I love that character. Gonna be sad when he goes.
So White Walkers, what do you think of all the circles? I mean, at the end of the day, not a big deal. It's just a symbol, or
it's going to be something. And I haven't looked, but is that the same symbol that was in the first scene of the first episode of the first season? That when they find them north of the wall, is that the same?
Yeah. So we've seen that circle about 5 or 6 times throughout episodes. Yeah, it's a 7-star, 7-piece circle like that. Yeah. So yeah, that symbol has been the same over and over and over again.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So there's there's the 7 kingdoms, there's the 7 gods, the stranger, the hag, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. That's it was, but that scene with that kid was creepy as hell. And I mean, it was one of those things that's gonna happen, and you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah. So Jeff's question, right, which is I agree with this. So can the Night King reanimate the dead? Can we see characters killed off come back like Littlefinger or Robb Stark? I think we're going to see something with this. I think that there is a tie-in to the tomb under Winterfell, right? And all of the old kings are there, and they've got they're all entombed, and I think that there's something with this when the Night King shows up in Winterfell. He walks down there, and all of a sudden, our boy Ned's going to just pop. Well, his head got chopped off, so maybe not.
But it Robb's. So if you remember, I don't know if they talked about it in the TV show, but in the book, they chopped off Robb's head, they chopped off his wolf's head, and they sewed the wolf's head onto his body. So that's going to be a tough one, but
I think right, and I think all of their dire wolves are down there with them as well. So is this what? All right, so the White Walkers show up at Winterfell. They kick their asses, but they all escape, right? So they all run south. But then the Night King goes down there, and at the end of whatever episode that is, he does this number, and all of a sudden, all those tombs open up, and I think that I think Jeff is onto something here. I think this is going to be episode 2 or episode 3 where he reanimates all of those dead people as well.
Yeah, and he brings up another interesting point. I should be talking to Jeff about this instead of you. He's way smarter. The opening sequence has always been awesome. I mean, the music is so great and all that, but they subtly alter the opening for every episode depending on what's going on in that episode, what locations are important, things like that. And like Jeff mentions, that they show the crypts in the opening. So maybe it was just because of that scene where Sam and John were talking in the crypts, but maybe it has some other significance.
Yeah, I mean, they've been in the crypts more than once. And so in the new opening animation, right, I literally took all the blue flipping tiles as the White Walkers walking. I didn't see any other way to follow that. So. Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed the music is different this season. It sounds like it's like tuned down half a little bit, and there's more cello, less violin. It's just really deep, and it struck us as very foreboding.
I mean, if the show ends, in traditional or on this weird story that's been on the whole time, right? I mean, basically, the White Walkers just kill everyone, and the Night King sits in Westeros and goes, meh.
Yep. Yeah, but then what does he do when it warms up? I don't know.
Well, he just makes it cold there, or does he win? And then the children of the corn, the children of the forest, do they show up and be like, oh, now you're dead again, and reboot? Kind of like a Matrix type of. Remember how like when the architect and Neo met and they kind of said, okay, reboot.
Boop boop. Yeah, Jeff's saying that he thinks the undead will figure out a way to cross the water. I don't know about that, but we do have precedents for that because the Dothraki would never cross the water. They would never get in boats. That was one of the big problems. And, well, Casterly Rock found out, the Dothraki showed up there, so they got on the boats. So maybe the dead figure out how to sail too.
And there's a fleet of ships that could take them wherever sitting in the harbor.
Yep, but it's going to be filled with other dead people. But...
So, there's so many ways, right? Because they've just taught us that they're just not going to do whatever we... So any rational theory is poop. You get rid of it, right? You've got to be thinking crazy town.
Yep. I have not fought enough Crazy Town, but you're right. Yeah.
And that's another great point there, right? The not crossing the water. So, I mean, do they just end up taking over this side, but all the people, in all the other fancy places, Bravos and things like that, are they just like, that place is White Walker. We're going to stay on this side.
That
Peace.
sounds like a YP. That is your problem. No, it'll be. And then, maybe a land bridge shows up, and they just skedaddle across.
Does he just walk and just freeze the water as he goes? Shh.
If he'd have done that, he'd have done that to get John and the boys.
Yeah, but right, it's that whole idea. Maybe his power grows as he, eats more people or whatever.
Yep. Whatever he gets incented on, eating people. Or...
what is his sales quota about?
Exactly. Yeah, it's good. I was expecting more for them the first episode, more stuff, but I get why they did the way they did. It was probably the right thing to do. Yeah. No elephants.
Yeah, what was the significance? I mean, they said that like 3 times. Why do we keep talking about elephants? Right, back to your whole point that every minute is precious. Why did I spend 27 seconds of that show hearing about elephants on 3 different occasions?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I mean, when I think about battle, I just think about Hannibal taking the elephants over the hills in Italy.
Yep.
That's the only thing I can think of.
But we've never had elephants in part of the battle, any of the battles we've had to this point.
No. They've had the big mammoths from north of the wall, but I think that's, yeah. I don't know. Well, I need to scoot out. The cleaning folks want to vacuum outside my office, so I need to let them do that.
All right. Well, this was fun. I guess we'll hopefully recap next week's episode next week.
We should do that. Yeah, chat room will stick around for a bit. If you've got any of the theories, we'd love to see them, but we gotta kill the tape. But yeah, we'll have to do this next week. We'll have to do a recap again.
All right. So I'm gonna stop the recording. Thanks for everybody that listened to the spoilers.
Bye.